Stand on the edge of the precipice. Look down. Do not look at the horizon where the sun bleaches the sky white. Look down into the abyss of the rock. The wind here does not whistle. It howls through corridors of stone that should not exist. Imagine standing here 1,200 years ago. There is no temple. There is no courtyard. There is only a solid, unforgiving volcanic ridge. A mountain of basalt, hard as iron, born from the fiery bowels of the earth 65 million years ago. Now close your eyes. Listen. Can you hear it? Not the chanting of monks, not the ringing of bells, but the sound of metal striking stone. Cling, cling, cling. A rhythm that starts slow, a heartbeat in the silence of the Deccan Plateau. Then it multiplies. 10 hammers, 100, 1,000. The air fills with the acrid smell of crushed rock and sweving bodies. Dust clouds rise like smoke from a battlefield. But this is not a war of destruction. This is a war of creation, a war against the very nature of reality. Because the men standing on this cliff edge are about to do something that defies every rule of engineering, every instinct of architecture, and every limitation of human sanity. They are not going to build a temple. They are not going to stack stones one upon another, reaching for the heavens. No, they are going to carve a cathedral out of the living mountain, starting from the roof and digging their way down into the earth. One mistake, one fissure in the rock, one slip of the chisel, and the entire structure collapses before it is even born. There are no blueprints, there are no do-overs, there is only the rock, the hammer, and a vision so terrifyingly ambitious that it feels less like construction and more like an act of divine madness. How did they do it? How did they remove 200,000 tons of rock without a single machine? How did they carve freestanding pillars, elephant statues, and intricate galleries from a single block of stone with zero margin for error? And why? What desperation, what devotion drove a king and his people to turn a mountain inside out? This is not just the story of a cave. This is the story of the greatest impossible object ever created by human hands. This is the enigma of Ellora. To understand the magnitude of this achievement, we must retreat from the edge of the cliff and step back into the shadows of the 8th century. The year is 756 AD. The Rashtrakuta dynasty is rising like a storm over the Deccan. King Krishna I sits on a throne that is not yet secure. The air in the court is thick with intrigue, whispered threats, and the burden of legacy. But the king's mind is not on politics, it is on a promise. A legend whispers through the corridors of history, a story passed down by the stonecutters themselves. It is said that the queen, desperate for her husband's health, made a vow to Lord Shiva. She swore she would not break her fast until she saw the Shikara, the crowning spire of a magnificent temple dedicated to the god of destruction. But building a temple takes decades. The architects trembled. To stack stones, to quarry and transport and assemble would take too long. The king would die, or the queen would starve. The vow seemed impossible, until one man, a master architect whose name has been lost to the winds of time, stepped forward. He did not ask for quarries. He did not ask for ox carts to haul stone. He pointed to the Charanandri hills and said, "I will not build up, I will cut down. I will give you the spire within a week." It sounded like sorcery, but he was speaking of a method so radical it had rarely been attempted on such a scale, the monolithic excavation. Imagine the scene on the first day. The master architect stands atop the basalt ridge. The sun beats down on the black rock, making it shimmer with heat.
He holds a simple iron chisel. He looks at the blank canvas of the ground. He has to visualize the entire three-story complex, the courtyards, the bridges, the statues of elephants, the sanctum sanctorum, all of it buried inside the solid rock beneath his feet. He marks a line, and the digging begins. This is the phase of brute force, the great trench. Before any art can emerge, the mountain must be conquered. 3 giant trenches are sunk into the hillside, defining the perimeter of what will become the Kailasa Temple. The workers are not artists yet. They are human excavators. Using heavy hammers and iron wedges, they smash into the volcanic trap rock. It is brutal, back-breaking work. The basalt here is treacherous. It is layered, formed by ancient lava flows. If they strike a hidden pocket of loose ash or a vertical crack, the monolithic integrity is ruined. The architect must read the rock like a manuscript, sensing its flaws before they appear. Day by day, the pit deepens. They are creating an island of stone in the center of a massive quarry. But this island is not shapeless. As they dig down, they leave the center block intact, but they are already shaping the roof. The shikara emerges from the ground, fully formed, carved before the floor of the temple is even reached. The queen gets her wish. She sees the spire, but the work has only just begun. Now comes the vertical descent. The scaffoldings are not built up, they are lowered down. The sculptors hang suspended over the abyss, chipping away at the sides of the central block. This is where the miracle of the breast and beast construction comes into play. The sculpting of the rock into forms that breathe. The prompt specifically mentions the breast construction. A phrase likely alludes to the exquisite, almost impossible softness achieved in the depictions of the divine feminine found throughout the cave complex, particularly in the river goddess shrines and the Yakshini figures. Let us pause and look closely at these figures. In the dim light of the excavated halls, the stone seems to turn to flesh. The sculptors of Ellora were not merely cutting rock, they were freeing the spirit trapped within it. The female figures, the river goddesses Ganga and Yamuna, stand guard at the entrances. The construction of their forms is a masterclass in ancient anatomy. The challenge here is immense. In a constructed temple, if you carve a statue and break a nose or a limb, you throw it away and get a new block of stone. Here, the statue is part of the temple's structural DNA. You cannot replace it. If you break the arm of a goddess, the temple is forever flawed. The sculptor must work with a terrified precision. He uses a fine chisel, tapping with the lightness of a bird's wing. He smooths the basalt, polishing it until it glows like black mirror. The curvature of the waist, the swell of the hips, the heavy, rounded breasts that symbolize abundance and fertility. These are not just artistic choices, they are theological statements carved in geology. The artisans understood that the temple was the body of the universe. The voluptuousness of the female forms represented the fullness of nature, the prakriti, the dynamic energy that animates the cosmos. To carve such softness out of the hardest rock in India is a paradox that the mind struggles to accept. You want to reach out and touch the stone, expecting it to be warm, yielding skin, but your hand meets the cold, eternal basalt. But the construction goes beyond the human form. We must talk about the beasts. The base of the Kailasa Temple is not a simple plinth. It is carried on the backs of elephants. A herd of life-sized elephants, carved from the living rock, seems to march out of the shadows, bearing the weight of the massive structure on their shoulders. These are the beasts of Ellora. The detail is excruciating. You can see the wrinkles in their skin, the power in their trunks, the intelligence in their eyes. These are not static decorations, they are the architectural foundation, visually suggesting that the temple is a chariot of the gods, ready to move. The construction of this frieze required the excavators to undercut the rock deeply, creating a shadow play that makes the elephants appear to be fully detached from the wall, though they are one with it.
We are now 30 feet down. The courtyard is opening up. The sunlight floods into the pit, revealing the sheer scale of the subtraction. They have removed over 3 million cubic feet of rock. Where did it go? We must consider the logistics. There were no trucks. A constant stream of laborers, a human conveyor belt, must have carried baskets of rubble up narrow ramps, day and night for 20 years. The debris was dumped miles away to ensure it didn't slide back into the sacred precinct. The noise would have been deafening, a constant industrial roar in a valley of meditation. And amidst this chaos, the silence of the inner sanctum was being prepared. Let us move deeper, past the Kailasa, into the earlier caves, the Buddhist group, caves 1 to 12. Here, the construction technique is different. It is quieter, more introspective. The Vishwakarma cave, number 10, the Carpenter's cave. Look at the ceiling. It is carved with stone ribs that mimic wooden beams. Why? Why make stone look like wood? It is a memory of the architecture that came before. The builders were translating the language of timber into the language of eternity. The great Chaitya window throws a beam of light that strikes the stupa, illuminating the face of the Buddha. The construction here focuses on acoustics. If you chant the mantra Om in this hall, the sound resonates in the chest, vibrating through the stone ribs, creating a psychoacoustic effect that induces a trance state. The architects were not just building rooms, they were building instruments for the soul. Then, the Jain caves, the final phase, caves 30 to 34. By now, centuries have passed. The rock is different here, the style more intricate. The Indra Sabha, the assembly of Indra, it is a 2-story wonder. The construction is finer, more delicate. The pillars are lathe-turned, or so they appear, covered in filigree so minute it looks like lace. The stone here was once painted. Imagine it not as gray ruin, but as a psychedelic explosion of color. Lapis lazuli blue, ochre red, lime white. The fragments of plaster still cling to the ceiling, whispering of a time when these caves glowed like jewels in the torchlight. The construction of the Jain caves emphasizes verticality and austerity, combined with intense ornamentation. It is a contradiction, much like the faith itself, a rejection of the material world expressed through the most material of mediums. But we must return to the Kailasa, the heart of the mystery. As the excavation reached the floor level, the architects faced their greatest challenge, the bridges. They carved bridges connecting the gatehouse to the main temple and the main temple to the Nandi Mandapa. These bridges hang in the air, stone spanning space. If the rock had a hidden fracture, the bridge would snap under its own weight. The tension during the carving of these spans must have been unbearable. One strike and the connection is severed forever. And let us not forget the drainage. This is a pit. When the monsoons come, the water pours in like a deluge. If they had not planned for this, the temple would be a swimming pool within a season. But the master architect was a hydromic engineer as well. He carved secret channels,
underground drains and subtle gradients into the floor that whisked the water away instantly. Even today, after 1,000 years, the drainage system works perfectly. Modern engineers are still baffled by the precision of these ancient slopes. Who were these people? We know the kings, we know the dynasties, but what of the hands that held the chisels? They lived and died here, generation after generation. A grandfather would start carving a pillar, and his grandson would finish the capital. They lived in temporary shelters on the rim of the canyon, inhaling the stone dust that would eventually coat their lungs and shorten their lives. They were anonymous, yet they were the greatest artists the world has ever seen. They worked with a devotion that transcends the concept of labor. For them, every strike of the hammer was a prayer. To carve the rock was to participate in the act of divine creation. And what of the tools? Iron chisels, wooden mallets, plumb lines, water levels. That is it. No lasers, no dynamite, no computer-aided design. They used the shadow of the sun to measure time and direction. They used bowls of water to measure the level of the floor. They used their hands to measure the smoothness of the divine limbs. The amazing breast construction, if we take the phrase literally as a nod to the sculpting of the female form, required a set of tools varying from heavy picks for the rough work to needle-like points for the eyelids and jewelry. The polishing stones were used for weeks on a single surface to achieve that skin-like texture that makes the stone look soft. As we walk through the corridors of Cave 16 today, we are walking through a negative space. We are walking through the ghost of the mountain that was removed. Every inch of air in this courtyard was once solid rock. The emptiness is the construction. This is the philosophy of Ellora. Perfection is not achieved by adding, but by taking away, by removing the excess, the unnecessary, the false, until only the truth remains. The truth of the god, the truth of the elephant, the truth of the goddess. Night falls on the caves. The tourists leave. The monkeys retreat to the trees. The silence returns. But it is not empty silence. It is heavy with the memory of the hammer. The shadows lengthen, and the stone figures seem to move. The Kailasa Temple stands as a defiance of time. Civilizations have risen and fallen. The Rashtrakutas are gone. The Mughals came and went. The British mapped and measured and left. But the mountain remains. The construction of Ellora is not finished because it lives in the mind of everyone who sees it. It challenges us. It asks us, what are you building that will last 1,000 years? What mountain are you willing to move? As the moon rises over the basalt cliffs, illuminating the white gopuram of the modern temple nearby, the black monolith of Kailasa drinks the darkness. It is a beast of stone, a breast of the earth, a testament to the limitless power of human will, fueled by faith. We leave the caves, but the caves do not leave us. We carry the weight of that removed rock in our souls, forever changed by the knowledge that once, on this spinning planet, men touched the sky and brought it down to earth, one chip of stone at a time.